I'm with the Incentive Auction Task Force. Welcome to the workshop on the reverse bidding in the reverse auction clock phase of the incentive auction. The slides for today's show are available online. We're streaming this, and the slides for today's show are also available online on the Auction 1001 page. If you just click on the Education tab, the slides are there if you'd like to print off the slides in addition to watching this online. And now, without further ado, let me introduce the chair of the Incentive Auction Task Force, Gary Epstein, who will welcome you to this event.
Thanks, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Incentive Auction Workshop on bidding in the clock phase of the reverse auction. This is the third of 4 bidder education events designed to familiarize broadcasters with the reverse auction bidding system. The fourth is the mock auction. Later this week, Melissa will talk a lot more about the mock auction. Combined with the releases of the user guide and the online tutorial earlier this month, today's workshop will prepare you for what you're seeing when you log on, why you'll be seeing it, and most important, how to actually place bids. Exactly 1 week from today, the first round of the clock bidding in the reverse auction will begin. As Chairman Wheeler has said, broadcasters stepped up, and we will begin the auction at the maximum initial spectrum clearing target of 126 megahertz. In this next phase of the auction, your bids and the auction process will determine how much it will cost to acquire the spectrum we need to meet that target. After that, it's up to the wireless bidders in the forward auction. If the auction doesn't close at this initial clearing target, we'll run another stage of the auction, which will include resumed bidding in the reverse auction. The auction is designed to match the supply of spectrum from the reverse auction with the demand for wireless capacity by forward auction bidders. The educational and informational opportunities this week are not limited to today's workshop. The reverse auction preview window opened yesterday, and we urge qualified bidders to log on after this workshop is over. Tomorrow and Thursday, we'll hold a mock auction to give qualified bidders a chance to practice using the auction system. The information we've provided is intended to be reference material for use in preparation for and during the auction. You'll have an opportunity to ask our auction team and technical support staff any questions about how the auction system works now before the bidding and in real time during the auction. We're confident that you will find the actual bidding in the auction to be intuitive and easy. We're ready to work with you as you enter the next phase of this historic auction. It's been 4 years, 3 months, and 2 days since Congress authorized the world's first two-sided spectrum auction. Since then, the Commission and each of you participating today have helped define and shape what the auction will look like. We're at the eve of the clock bidding on the auction. Review the materials, listen carefully, and our best to all interests involved, most importantly, the public interest. With that, let me introduce Aaron Griffith, Legal Advisor of the Incentive Auction Task Force, who will give you more details about the events of the next few days and will lead our review of the reverse auction bidding procedures. Aaron?
Thank you, Gary. All right, so before I get started, we're going to do our usual disclaimer here that nothing in this workshop is designed to supersede the rules, public notices, and official documents. And all of the examples and slides with stations and that sort of thing on them are hypothetical, and we're not using real data. Also, as a reminder, we will be doing a Q&A panel later in this workshop, so if you're live streaming this, you can send your questions to auction1001@fcc.gov. If you're here in the audience, please use the forms that were provided to you when you came in. So the first thing I'm going to do today is review what Gary already briefly mentioned, the preview period, the mock auction, and the bidding schedule. As you are hopefully aware by now, the preview period opened yesterday. It closes today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We encourage you to log in if you have at least one station that was qualified to participate in the final confidential status letter. You'll be able to see for that station the results of the initial commitment and information pertaining to round 1 of the clock phase. If you haven't already logged in, please do so after the workshop. And in particular, the reason you'll want to do that is once the preview window closes today at 6 Eastern Time, you won't be able to access that information again until we open the bidding system on May 31st. As Gary also mentioned, the last piece of the bidder education puzzle is the mock auction. It starts tomorrow, May 25th, 2016. The mock auction is voluntary, but we strongly encourage you to participate. This is your opportunity to get your hands on the bidding system and try it out and test it out and see how it works before the actual bidding starts. The stations and prices that you will see when you log into the mock auction that have been assigned to you are hypothetical. But the variety and number of stations that we've assigned to each bidder for their mock auction is similar to what they will have in the actual auction. Likewise, regardless of what your status was, if you logged into the preview period for your real station, everyone will have the opportunity to bid in the mock auction. And just like in the regular auction, if you don't place a bid for one of these stations in any round, including the first round, the auction system will treat a missing bid as a bid to drop out of the auction, which means that if your stations in the mock auction drop out, you won't be able to bid on anything anymore. So if you do want to participate, please make sure you log in and place bids. The schedule for the mock auction is on the screen now. There will be 2 rounds tomorrow and 3 rounds on May 26th. Remember, again, the schedule is always in Eastern Time. And the login process and the URL for accessing the mock auction were provided in the final confidential status letter. The login process is the same as for making an initial commitment. And access to the system begins tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. The first round of bidding begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You may bid either electronically or telephonically, and please feel free to call the bidder hotline number that was provided in the confidential status letter. We have a great team of staff standing by, ready to answer any questions that you may have as you are playing with the system and seeing the results of your mock auction. Finally, the clock phase actually starts next Tuesday, May 31st. There will be only 1 round that day and 1 round on June 1st. However, beginning on June 2nd and continuing until further notice, every single weekday that is not a federal holiday, there will be 2 rounds, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember that the FCC may adjust the length of the rounds or the number of rounds depending on the reverse auction's progress. If the schedule changes, there will be an announcement in the bidding system during the auction, so be sure to pay attention to the auction schedule. I'm now going to go over some of the highlights of the bidding procedures. Detailed information about these procedures can be found in the bidding procedures public notice. Also, the tutorial that we put out this last week is an excellent resource. And so before we get into the actual system, we're going to go over some of these highlights. Bidding statuses, currently held option, vacancy index, price offers, and proxy bidding. This is a place for me to remind you about the high points of these procedures and for you all to ask questions later in this process. First, the bidding statuses. Inside the auction system, for each station that you have that was deemed qualified to participate in the clock phase, the station will have a bidding status. The bidding status is your guide to what you need to do for that station during the next round, for the remainder of the stage, or potentially for the rest of the auction, depending on what the station's status is. This chart displays the possible bidding statuses in Stage 1. If there is a subsequent stage to the auction, there are 2 other statuses that you could see in the system, but we're not going to go over those right now. So first thing first, this is a clock auction. It is made up of discrete bidding rounds. So first and foremost, if you see the status bidding listed next to one of your stations, it is imperative that you place a bid for that station in the next round if you want that station to remain in the auction. If you do not place a bid for that station, if a bid is not placed for that station that has the status bidding, the auction system will treat that missing bid as a bid to drop out. Remember, you can place bids manually, or if you have proxy instructions that are still in effect, the auction system will place the bid for you according to those instructions. But if it says bidding, you must place a bid if you want the station to stay in the auction longer. Second, if your station has the status frozen, provisionally winning, that means that you are a provisional winner for that station, and you will not need to bid again for the remainder of the stage. So why only provisionally winning? Well, you don't become a winning bidder unless this is the final stage of the auction. Remember, a stage consists of one reverse auction and one forward auction, which is run after the reverse auction of a stage concludes. Each stage attempts to clear a particular amount of spectrum to meet a particular clearing target, and if the forward auction does not generate enough proceeds to meet the final stage rule of the auction, then the auction will proceed to another stage, and your station status could change back to bidding because bidding will resume in the reverse auction on a new stage. And we'll talk briefly about subsequent stages again later in this presentation. Third, for VHF stations only, if you're bidding for a UHF station, you should feel free to tune out for just a second. If there's a status called frozen, currently infeasible, what this means is that for the time being, a VHF station that sees this status does not need to bid in the stage because it is actually frozen. However, a station with this status could potentially need to bid again in the current stage of the auction, so its status could change to bidding. Likewise, its status could also change to frozen provisionally winning, in which case it wouldn't need to bid for the remainder of the stage. But in this particular instance, if you see frozen, currently infeasible, be aware that you may need to bid again in the current stage. And finally, if the station has a status of exited, either exited voluntarily or exited not needed, be advised this means that the station will no longer bid in any stage of the auction in any round of the auction. The status indicates that the station is no longer in the auction and that it will be assigned a channel in its pre-auction band at the conclusion of the auction. So while each of your qualified bidders will have, for each of your qualified, each of your qualified stations will have a bidding status, as we just discussed. But stations with the status of bidding or frozen will have a currently held option. Stations that have exited aren't bidding to relinquish spectrum anymore, so they don't have a currently held option. The currently held option is the relinquishment option a station is assigned to after bids from the previous round are processed. And if you've already logged into the preview period, the currently held option going into round 1 is referred to on the screen as the initial option. The important thing to understand about a station's currently held option is that once you place a bid for an option and the auction system accommodates the station in that option, meaning that that option becomes the station's currently held option, this means that the auction system will always be able to make sure that it is able to accommodate the station in that option. So what do I mean by accommodate the station? I mean that as a factual matter, the auction system has determined that it is possible to assign the station to that option. For instance, if you placed a bid for a station to move into the low VHF band, and the auction system assigns the low VHF option to your station as its currently held option, this means that the auction system found a feasible channel for that station in the low VHF band, and going forward, it will make sure that there is a feasible channel in that band for that station until you take an action that could change your currently held option or you become not needed. Whether or not you need to continue to bid for a currently held option is driven by your bidding status. Remember, unless a station status is frozen provisionally winning, the auction system has not yet determined whether or not it will need to purchase that station to meet the clearing target. Therefore, you may need to continue to bid on your currently held option to stay in the auction. Your station's currently held option will change if you bid to switch to a new relinquishment option, and that is processed by the system, in which case your currently held option becomes the relinquishment option that you placed a bid for. It can also change if you place a bid to drop out of the auction that is processed. In that case, you will drop out and be assigned to a channel in your pre-auction band at the conclusion of the auction, so you will no longer have a currently held option. And if during bid processing the auction system determines that your station is no longer needed in the auction, you will also no longer have a currently held option because you will exit the auction. So now I'm going to get into the details of the vacancy index. So you have seen now, hopefully if you've already logged in, your stations have a bidding status. They may have a currently held option if they're, bidding or frozen currently infeasible or frozen provisionally winning. But you will also see for stations that have the status of bidding or frozen currently infeasible, vacancy information. The next few slides provide an explanation of what a vacancy index is, which bands you will see vacancy ranges for, how to interpret vacancy ranges, and we will go over a few examples. And if you could just give me one moment, I'm having some trouble with the slides. Could you? Where's the mouse? I can't scroll down.
Let me get you a mouse.
Thank you. Okay. So first, what is a vacancy index? For each station, the vacancy index is an average number of weighted channels available in a specific band in that station's neighborhood, given the currently held options of all stations. The auction system uses each station's volume to weight the number of available channels available to it, and then averages those weighted results for all stations in the station's neighborhood. So the vacancy index is a weighted average of the number of available stations. Thank you. Sorry guys, just 1 second. All right. A station's neighborhood includes all the stations that could interfere with the station in that band and thus potentially limit assigning that station to an available channel in that band. So the neighborhood is very specific to your station in that particular band that you're looking at. It's not as broad as DMA. It's very specific. When the FCC set the rules for calculating a vacancy index, the minimum possible value of the vacancy index is 0.5. And the highest possible value of the vacancy index is the number of available channels in the band. So for low VHF, that would be 5 channels, because the low VHF band is comprised of channels 2 to 6. The maximum number for the high VHF band is 7, because that band is made up of channels 7 to 13. For the UHF band, the maximum number of channels is based on the clearing target. At a clearing target of 126 megahertz, the highest physical channel in the broadcast band is channel 29. Therefore, the highest possible number in the UHF band at the start of the auction will be 16, right? Channels 14 to 29. And you might be wondering how you can have 0.5 of a channel. Remember, the index is a weighted average of the number of available channels in a neighborhood, so it may be a decimal value. And you will not actually see the vacancy index. What you see in the auction system is a range. The vacancy index is calculated for your station, falls somewhere within the range that you see on the screen. And now we're going to talk about for which bands you would see a range. For each station with the status bidding or frozen currently infeasible, vacancy ranges are displayed for the station's pre-auction band and for every band associated with an available relinquishment option for that station in the next round, excluding the currently held option. Vacancy range is not provided for the station's currently held option because, as we already discussed, the auction system has already determined that the station can be accommodated in its currently held option, and it will continue to ensure that the station can remain will be accommodated in that option. And additionally, remember, you will never see vacancy information for go off air because there is no vacancy. It has unlimited capacity. Now we're going to talk a little bit how to interpret these ranges. What are they used for? The vacancy range will give you a rough indication of how free the band is for a station as of the time of calculation. So you can sort of get a sense of, is there low vacancy, meaning that the band is very full, or is there a high amount of vacancy, meaning there are lots of available channels still. The lower the values are in the range, the fewer the number of available channels in that particular band. So, for instance, the lower the values are in the station's pre-auction band, it indicates that there are fewer available channels remaining in that band, so there is a higher potential that the station may become frozen. A station's pre-auction band fills up as other stations drop out of the auction, and for VHF stations, the pre-auction band can also fill up as UHF stations are assigned to channels in the VHF band. Additionally, lower values in bands other than the station's pre-auction band also indicate that there are fewer available channels in that band, which can mean, for instance, that if you want to place a bid to switch from your station's currently held option into a different band, the lower values for that band's vacancy range indicate a lower likelihood that the station will be able to switch into that band in the next round because there are fewer vacant or available channels. Now, this is important. As I've described how to interpret these vacancy ranges, I've used phrases like higher potential and lower likelihood. The thing to remember about the vacancy range is that it provides you with a range of the weighted average number of available channels in a band for your station after bid processing from the previous round. However, we don't know what's going to happen in the upcoming round, so the bids of other bidders in the next round may change the likelihood that a station will be able to switch into a new band or the likelihood that the station will still have a feasible channel in its pre-auction band. You will see predefined ranges in the station's pre-auction band. The FCC actually set particular ranges, so these are the ranges that you'll see in the system for your pre-auction band. For a UHF station, the ranges are 0.5 to 3, 3 to 6, and assuming a clearing target of 126 megahertz, 6 to 16. High VHF stations are 0.5 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 7, and low VHF stations are 0.5 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 5. For any other relevant bands to your station, the vacancy ranges that you see are not predefined. So this means you will likely see decimal values in those ranges, but interpreting them remains the same. The vacancy index for that station in that band that you're looking at falls somewhere within the range that you see. The minimum number of the range is still 0.5, the maximum number is still the number of channels in the band, and the lower the number, the more full the band. So let's look at a couple examples. On the screen, we're looking at the vacancy information for WBOB there at the top. And remember, this is examples for illustrative purposes only. It does not represent real data. WBOB is a UHF station. And you can see that its vacancy range for drop out of bidding to UHF or drop out to UHF is listed as 6.0 to 16. This is one of those predefined ranges because this is the station's pre-auction band. It is also the highest range of the three defined ranges, meaning that there are a greater number of available channels in the UHF band than if it saw one of the other two possible predefined ranges. The vacancy index for this station in the UHF band indicates that a weighted average between 6 and 16 channels are available in the UHF band for this station. Continuing to look at WBOB, we can see that its initial vacancy range for a move to high VHF option is 0.5 to 1.4. Remember, the high VHF band has a maximum of 7 channels. The minimum value is 0.5. Therefore, after the initial commitments were processed, the vacancy of the station's high VHF neighborhood here is very low. This means that there are probably not very many available channels for the station in the high VHF band. We can also see that its initial vacancy range for a move to low VHF is 0.7 to 2.1. Again, the lowest number is 0.5, and for the low VHF band, it has a maximum of 5 channels. So this range indicates that the vacancy in the low VHF band is also relatively low. Again, there may not be very many available channels for this station in that band. Now that we've reviewed the vacancy information that will be available to you in the auction, I'm going to briefly review price offers. I reiterate that this will be brief. If you want more detailed information on price offers, please refer to the public notices and online tutorial. But the reverse auction is a descending clock auction. Therefore, this means that there is a base clock, which in this auction is $900. Each round, the base clock is reduced by the larger of 5% of the current base clock price or 1% of the $900 opening price. For a UHF station bidding to go off air, again, UHF station bidding to go off air, the price offer will be equal to the base clock multiplied by that station's volume. If you don't know your station's volume, you can find that information easily on the Station Info tab of the auction system. However, in addition to the base clock price, among other things, when calculating the price offers for VHF stations or for UHF stations wanting to move into the VHF bands, the auction system takes into account the vacancy of the VHF band. Why? Well, ideally, the auction system would like to utilize all of the bands. So, for instance, if there are a lot of available channels in the VHF bands, the auction system may potentially lower prices to move into those bands at a slower rate in order to incentivize stations to actually move into those bands. The point here is simply that the decrement percentage for the VHF bands may vary greatly from round to round based on the relative availability of channels in the VHF bands. And this may be important for you to know if you have a UHF station and are intending to bid to move into those options or if you're bidding for a VHF stations. One of the reasons that this may matter to you is if you want to use proxy bidding, which I will talk about now. A proxy instruction can be used to tell the auction system to submit bids on your behalf in all rounds in which the price offer is greater than or equal to the amount entered for the proxy instruction. I'm going to stress a point now. I get this question a lot, so please pay attention. Proxy instructions have no impact on your price offers. If you choose to enter proxy instructions, the auction system will use those instructions to place bids for your station in accordance with those instructions. The auction system does not look at or use proxy instructions for any other purpose than to place bids in accordance with those instructions. If you choose to use proxy instructions, please note that proxy instructions can only be submitted for a station's currently held option. You can change or delete proxy instructions at any time during a round, and during a round, you can manually change a bid that was placed for you by the auction system according to those instructions. As a reminder, you should check regularly to make sure that your proxy instructions remain in effect, because as soon as the price offer for a station's currently held option drops below the proxy amount you have entered, the proxy instruction will no longer be in effect and the auction system will not submit bids for that station anymore. A missing bid is a bid to drop out of the auction. It's sort of like if you are driving a car and you want to use cruise control. It can be there and make sure that you stay on the speed limit and everything's going right, but you still have to pay attention. You can't just take a nap. I'm about to turn the presentation over to Melissa Dumper, the Director of Systems for the Incentive Auction Task Force. She's going to go over how you actually use the auction system. And to echo Gary, I think you will find that the auction system is intuitive to use. And with the review of the procedures we just went over, you should have a pretty good understanding of the information that you'll encounter in the bidding system. But before I do, I want to go over the few highest level takeaway points from today's presentation. First, pay attention to the bidding schedule and the bidding status for your stations. I will say it again, a missing bid is a bid to drop out. Proxy instructions are a useful tool. Please feel free to use them. But you still need to pay attention to the price offers and bidding statuses. Likewise, while the decrement percentage of the base clock price is predictable, the decrement percentage for price offers for anything other than a UHF station bidding to go off the air will vary from round to round based on vacancy. Whether or not the auction system freezes a station depends solely on if it can find a feasible channel for that station in its pre-auction band. As long as a station could be needed to meet the clearing target, and it has a feasible channel in its pre-auction band, the auction system will offer the station lower price offers, and it will have the status bidding. And on that note, the vacancy ranges are helpful because they can provide you with a snapshot of the vacancy in a particular band, but they're only a snapshot of the vacancy as of the time they are calculated. As bidding progresses in the auction, the bids of other stations from round to round will change the vacancy. So while it does give you a good indication of how free or full the band is, keep in mind that it will not necessarily drive. Just because it has a low vacancy does not mean that you will be able to, just because there is a low vacancy range does not mean that if you place a bid to move into that other band that it may not be able to be accommodated. And likewise, if there is a low vacancy in your station's pre-auction band, that does not guarantee that you will freeze. You do not freeze until the auction system can no longer find a feasible channel in your pre-auction band. So now Melissa is going to talk about the reverse auction bidding system.
Good morning. So before I get started, I just want to emphasize a few things about some of the things that Aaron talked about. We've been getting a lot of questions about vacancy. And so let me just, at a high level, talk to you about why we are providing you those numbers. This actually came out of discussions with bidders about what information would be available during the auction, and it was something that bidders asked to have so that they had some sense of what was happening outside of their world of their stations in their bidding. So we provided a vacancy index information. It is there for you as information. It's not required that you understand these numbers in order to bid. It simply gives you information about what's happening in your neighborhood for your stations. Is the band filling up? Is it not filling up? Are you likely to be getting close to being frozen or not? That's generally how it's meant to be used. If you have questions, please feel free to call us. We have staff trained to answer your questions. The slides that Aaron went over today, we will make available in the tutorial as well as in these workshop slides. And like I said, any additional questions, we can talk about more today, Q&A, or send us an email or give us a call. A little bit about the proxy also. It is, again, meant to just be an aid for you. You do not have to use the proxy. It's not required that you get concerned about what about this and what about that. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. If you would like to use it, it's there for you to use, and we are happy to help you with it and answer any of your questions. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the bidding system. And my goal today is to help you get comfortable with the bidding system that you will be using during the clock phase of the auction. You've already had some exposure to it. During the initial commitments, you made your initial commitments using the reverse auction bidding system. It's a component of that system. If you have logged in during the preview period, then you've already seen the reverse auction bidding system. You've seen it in its state before the auction starts. What you have not seen yet is what the auction system is like when bidding is going on. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And tomorrow you have the opportunity to practice that in the mock auction. So the mock auction, we've been getting some questions about the difference between the mock auction and the system that you're seeing during the preview period. So when you've logged in during the preview period, what you're seeing is the actual bidding system with the real data. When you log into the mock auction tomorrow, you're going to log in at a different URL because it's on a different machine and it's got hypothetical station information. But it still has your information. You're going to log in with your FRN, with your password, with your PIN, with your token. All of that's been set up. The system knows who you are. The only thing that's different is the station data. And because of that, the price offers are different. It's meant for you to get familiar with the software. You can practice placing bids. You can practice placing proxy instructions. You can look at the results. All of that without any fear of like, oh, this is the real data or this is the real auction. Okay, it's meant to be a practice. Now, if you do participate, and we really, really encourage you to participate. I mean, hands-on experience is so much more valuable than me standing up here and going through screens with you. So please come to the mock auction. And it's very important that you come to the first round of the mock auction, because if you don't bid in the first round, as Aaron was saying, the auction system will treat that as a missing bid and you will drop out. And then if you show up in round 2, you won't be able to bid because your stations have all dropped out. So it's very important that you come at round 1. Even if in the real data your stations are frozen, in the mock data we've made it so that your stations are not frozen and you have the opportunity to practice bidding, which is good practice in the event we go to a stage 2 when you become bidding again, or you have a status of bidding. So it's good practice for everybody. Everybody will have the opportunity to practice. Please come to the mock auction. Okay, now let's talk about the clock phase and getting ready for the clock phase. We have many resources available to you to train you on the bidding system and to be there as a resource during the clock phase. On the Auction 1001 website, under the Education tab, we have published a user guide. So this is a complete guide to using the bidding system during the clock phase. You can look up anything you have questions about in the software. It will be in the user guide. But of course, you can always call us on the auction bidder line if you have questions about how to use the software. Next, we have published a clock phase tutorial. And while this is more about the bidding procedures, it is presented in the context of the software. So you will see the My Results screen, and then the tutorial goes through what is all those columns on the My Results tab. What are they? How do they get determined? So it's really tying the bidding procedures to the bidding system. So please use the tutorial as a reference guide as well. And finally, we have today's workshop. We are recording this workshop and we will make it available on the website soon. Let's talk about accessing the system. So I'm going to talk about accessing the auction system with the real data in it. So that's the one that you've been logging into for the preview period. That preview period will close at 6 p.m. tonight. Once it closes, we are going to close off access to the auction system until May 31st at 9 a.m., which is 1 hour before the first round of bidding begins. So if you want to see the results from your initial commitment and you don't want to wait till May 31st at 9 a.m., please log in before 6 p.m. tonight. On May 31st at 9 a.m., when this system becomes available, you will see a link on the auction homepage, and you click on that link to log into the system. Authorized bidders log into the system using the same username, password, and PIN used during the initial commitment and the preview period. If you've not yet logged into the system, if you have more than one authorized bidders and one person has been logging in and now it's first time for you, you will have to go through the process of setting a PIN. There's information in the user guide about how to set your PIN for the first time. And if you have any problems logging in, you should contact technical support. That number was provided to you in your final confidential status letter. Once you log into the system, you will see on the far left the navigation bar. From the navigation bar, you can access the 7 screens in the bidding system. They are, first, the place bid screen. This is where you're going to place your bids, and if you want to, your proxy instructions. You can only place bids and proxy instructions during a bidding round. The bid summary screen is where you view a summary of the bids and the proxy instructions you placed in the most recent round, or you can navigate to a past round. On the My Results screen, you will view your results after bid processing of a round is complete. The download screen is where you download information about your stations, your bids, and your results. The auction schedule screen is where you can view the upcoming bidding schedule. The messages screen is where you can view announcements from the FCC and send messages to the FCC. And finally, the station info screen is where it contains the basic information about your stations in the auction. At any time, you can lock your screen or log out. The top bar appears on every screen, and it displays the name and FRN of the qualified bidder. It displays the current stage and round number, the current time in Eastern Time and the date, and a countdown timer. Before a round opens, the timer will show the time until the round opens. During the round, the timer shows the time until the round closes. When there's 5 minutes left in a round, the timer will turn red with a white background to warn you that the round is about to close. Now we'll look closer at each of the screens in the bidding system. Starting with the station info screen. It displays information about your qualified stations. The information on the screen does not change throughout the reverse auctions. It's just there as a reference for you. The relinquishment options that you selected on FCC Form 177 are displayed for your reference here on this page for each station. And if you have more than 4 stations, the screen will also include a filter that enables you to quickly find a specific station. On the messages screen, you may view announcements and send messages to the FCC. If you have any unread messages or announcements, you will see a message count notification next to the messages navigation link on the navigation bar as highlighted. Under the announcements section, you will see information about all the announcements that the FCC has sent. An announcement appears green until you have read it. Next to the information about the announcement is the title of the announcement and the first few lines of the announcement. You can view an entire announcement by clicking on the link. In this example, our announcement is very short, so there's not more to read, but with a longer announcement, this page would display the entire text of the announcement. Under the My Conversations section, you can view the messages that you have sent to the FCC and any replies from the FCC. To send a message, click on the Compose New Message button, enter a subject and the details of your message, and then click Send. Moving on to the My Results screen. So during the preview period, you can view your results from the initial commitment, as we've been talking about. The screen displays the following information for each of your qualified stations. In the first column is your bidding status. Next is the initial option that is assigned to your station as a result of the initial commitment. So we call it the initial option in stage 1. After that are the available options to your station based on what you selected on Form 177 and your initial option that has been assigned. In the next column is the initial vacancy. You'll notice that there's no number for go off air, as Aaron indicated. We have unlimited capacity in the go off air option, so we don't need a vacancy range there. And the last column is the clock prices for the next round. So in this case, round 1. You only see prices for the relinquishment options. There's no price for dropping off air. I mean, it's 0, but we didn't put that up there. Obviously, there's only price offers for the relinquishment options. Let me see, Okay, on the download screen, you can download information from the system. Each file is available in either Microsoft Excel format or as a CSV file. The My Stations download includes the information that is shown on the station info screen. The My Results download includes cumulative information from the My Results screen, so all the rounds of results for you. And the My Bids file is not available until round 1 begins because it pertains to bidding. You can view the schedule for upcoming bidding rounds on the auction schedule screen. The screen displays the duration, the start and end time for scheduled rounds. The next event is highlighted in red. In this example, the next event is the start of round 1. And the screen also shows the clearing target and highest channel for the current stage. Finally, we come to the Place Bids screen. During the preview period and any time that a round is not open, you will not be able to place bids. The Place Bids screen instead displays a banner that the next round is not yet open. Remember, bids can only be placed when a round is open. Once a round is open, the Place Bid screen looks something like this. This is showing us a bidder with 1 station. You will use the Place Bid screen to submit bids for stations with the status bidding. There is a red warning message at the top of the screen to indicate that you have not submitted bids for all your stations. You will use the current round bid drop-down to select your bid for the round. By default, the drop-down displays the station's currently held option. So you can see in this example, the currently held option is go off air. And by default, the drop-down is showing the go off air for this round's price. You can select a different bid option by clicking on the drop-down menu. The options that are available depend on the relinquishment options you selected on Form 177, your currently held option, and the bidding hierarchy. For more information about what options will appear in the drop-down, please go to the tutorial. We have a section called Available Options in the Additional Details section of the tutorial. Once you have selected your current round bid for a station, you must click the Submit button to submit the bid to the auction system. The red exclamation indicates that the bid has not yet been submitted. Once a bid has been submitted, the auction system will display a green check mark indicating that the bid has been submitted. If you're bidding for multiple stations, you can select and submit for each station your bid one at a time. Or you can also select the bids for all your stations and then click the Submit All to submit all your bid selections at once. Clicking the Submit All button will submit the currently held option for each station if you do not first select a different option. So, if you wish to continue to bid for each station's currently held option in a round, all you need to do is come in and click that Submit All button. And you're done. You've submitted all your bids at the currently held option. It's only if you want to switch your currently held option to maybe one of the VHF options, or if you want to drop out of bidding, that you need to go into that drop-down. If you want to switch from your currently held option and bid to move to one of the VHF bands, for example, say you wanted to switch your currently held option from go off air, as we see in this example, to move to low VHF. Once you select that as your current round bid, the system will prompt you to select a fallback bid. You must select either to stay in your currently held option at this round's price offer. You can see in this example how the price offer in the fallback menu for go off air is less than the price for the bidder's currently held option to go off air. So option 1 is stay in your currently held option at this round's price offer, or the other option for a fallback bid is to drop out of bidding. So more information about fallback bids and when they might get processed is also available on the tutorial. After you've made your selection, click Submit to submit your bid to the auction system. The system warns you if you've not submitted bids for some or all of your stations. In this example, the bidder has 3 stations with status bidding that have unsubmitted bids for the round. You can use the Submit All button, as we just discussed, to submit the currently held option as the current round bid for all remaining stations with unsubmitted bids. Or you can, of course, select a different bid option from the drop-down menu for those stations and then submit the bids. In this example, I will submit the currently held option at this round's price offers for the remaining stations, so I'm just going to click on the Submit All button, and then the system indicates the bids have been submitted for all stations. You can view your submitted bids using the bid summary screen. It also displays, it will display all bids and the fallback options, if applicable, submitted in the round. It indicates also who placed the bid and at what time the bid was placed and the date. You can use the print icon to print the page, and you can also view the bid summary for previous rounds by clicking on the drop-down list. Finally, another option is you can download your bids by clicking one of the file icons next to the My Bids download. So the My Bids file includes the bids that you place for the current and past rounds. It's cumulative. There are many ways to verify your bids. You get the green check mark on the Place Bids screen and the green message when all your bids have been placed. That's Place Bids. On the bid summary screen, you view the bids that you've placed, and you can just verify that that is indeed what you intended to bid. And finally, you can go to the Downloads screen, and you can download the My Bids file, go to the current round, and verify, yep, that's what I intended to bid. Lots of ways to verify your bids. Okay, what if you submitted a bid and then you change your mind, you want to submit a different bid, and the round is still open? Well, you can change your bid for a station by clicking on the Change button for that station on the Place Bids screen. To change your bid, select a different option from the drop-down menu. So in this station that we've been bidding for in this example, let's say we're going to go back to the currently held option of Go Off Air. After changing your current round bid, you must submit your bid. You must submit your changes by clicking on the Submit button. If you don't submit your changes, then the system will use the bid that you had submitted previously. So you have to submit your changes in order for that to overwrite what you have already submitted. Remember that bids must be submitted before the round ends. That includes any changes to bids. It has to be submitted before the round ends. When a round closes, the system will process the bids of all the bidders. In this example, you can see that round 1 has closed, and there's quite a bit of time before round 2 begins. While the bids are being processed, a message on the top of the My Results screen will indicate the bid processing is in progress. Until bid processing is complete, the results displayed on the screen will be for the previous round. Here you can see that the results for the initial commitment are displayed until the results for round 1 are posted. When the results are ready, a pop-up message will ask you to update the screen, as you see here. As applicable, for your stations, the My Results screen shows the following information. It'll always show the status for each station. If you bid for that station in the previous round, it will remind you what you bid in the previous round, and then it will tell you what your option is after bid processing, so what your currently held option is based on processing. It'll show your available options for the next round, the associated vacancy ranges, and the clock prices for the next round. You can use the drop-down to see results from previous rounds or the initial option as well. Again, you can find more information about what each of these columns are and how they're determined on the online tutorial. You can also download your results from the download screen. As with the My Bids file, the My Results file includes data for all past rounds as well as the current round. All right, now we'll talk about proxy instructions. If you choose to enter a proxy instruction, let's make sure you know how to do that. If you are bidding to stay in your currently held option, you can also enter a proxy instruction by clicking on the link that shows up below the current round bid dropdown. After clicking on the link, enter your proxy amount in the box, and then click Submit to submit the bid and the proxy instruction. You're simultaneously submitting your bid and your proxy instruction. You can change or delete the proxy instruction by clicking on the change, just like you do with changing your bid. Your proxy instructions are displayed on the bid summary screen along with your bids. In this example, In this example, with these 4 stations, proxy instructions have been placed for all of the bidder stations, but you can submit proxy instructions for just some of your stations if you want, or none at all. When the next round starts, you can see that the place bid screen, that the system has already submitted bids for all stations with proxy instructions in effect. While the round is open, you can change or delete any of these bids using the Change button for the station. And the bid summary screen also confirms the bids have been placed by a proxy agent for the stations. Now let's move forward in this example about proxy bidding to the results for round 4. The bidding status for station WHSN has changed to frozen, currently infeasible. However, we see that the proxy instructions for that station still remain because the station could become unfrozen later in the stage. You can find out more information about the various bidding statuses in the online tutorial. Suppose that the bidder wants to change one of its proxy instructions in the next round. And also, let's say the bidder wants to submit a bid different than the bid submitted by a proxy for another station. I'm going to show you how that is done. To change a proxy instruction, click on Change for the relevant station on the Place Bid screen. Then enter the new price for the proxy instruction. So this is if you want to update your proxy instruction to a different amount. Then you can enter then you click on the Submit button to submit the change. And note that this can also be done for frozen, currently infeasible stations. So bidding, frozen, currently infeasible stations are the stations that you can submit proxy instructions for. There's an additional status in an additional stage. If we go to stage 2 or stage 3, the proxy instructions also apply. As always, you need to submit any changes to your proxy instruction before the round closes. If you want to submit a bid for a station that is different from the bid submitted by the proxy agent, you can do that by using the following steps. Click on the change for the relevant station on the Place Bid screen. Delete the proxy instruction. Select the new bid from the drop-down. And then submit the bid before the round closes. You can use the My Results screen to determine whether your proxy instructions will be in effect for the next round. If the next round clock price for your currently held options, shown in the last column, is below the proxy amount, shown in the third column, below your bid from the last round, then the instruction has expired and is no longer in effect. So again, if the price on the far right, which is your clock price, has dropped below your proxy bid amount, then the proxy instruction has expired. One reminder: remember, if it's expired, the bidder will need to bid in the next round if the bidder wants to be able to continue bidding for that station in future rounds. For a station that had the status bidding in the last round and continues to have the status in this round, the screen will provide a warning that your proxy instructions are no longer applicable. Hovering over the question mark icon displays the warning. For more details and examples of proxy bidding, please view the section about proxy bidding in the online tutorial. Now let's talk about what happens when one of your stations becomes provisionally winning during the clock phase. The My Results screen will provide an indication when a station's status has changed from the previous round, whether it's changing from bidding to frozen, currently infeasible, or changing to frozen, provisionally winning, or changing to exited, not needed. Whenever your station's status changes, you will see this message at the top of your My Results screen, and it says that you have details to view about one or more of your stations. So in this example, we see the blue question mark icon is next to station WBOB. Its status has changed to frozen, provisionally winning after bid processing of the selected round. Hovering over the icon reveals details about the change. In this example, we can also see that WHSN was frozen, provisionally winning in an earlier round. I know that because there's no question mark icon next to that station. So its status did not just change in this round. It was frozen, provisionally winning in a previous round. The My Results page also displays your provisionally winning compensation as of the selected round. This amount is calculated as the sum of the compensation of all your frozen provisionally winning stations. In this example, the bidder has 2 frozen provisionally winning stations, so its provisionally winning compensation is the sum of the compensations associated with the currently held options of those 2 stations. When all of your stations have either exited the auction or become provisionally winning, you no longer need to bid for the remainder of the stage, as is shown here for a bidder with 1 station. If bidding has ended for you for the current stage, the place bid screen will not be functional even when a round is open, but you may continue to log in and monitor the auction or download your files. When bidding ends for all bidders, the stage will conclude, and the system will indicate that bidding has concluded on the top bar in place of the countdown timer. The My Results screen for the last round of the stage displays the status for each of your stations at the conclusion of the stage, as well as your provisionally winning compensation for the stage. We recommend that you download all files after the reverse auction has concluded for a stage, and take printouts of any screens that you wish to keep, because we will close off access to the auction system once the reverse auction bidding has concluded for a stage. So we'll give you a little bit of time. We'll say the stage is concluded, give you some time to download your files, make any printouts you want, and then we will close off access until either we go into another stage or we're done, the auction's over. Before we take a break, I'm going to really quickly tell you about one other system that is going to be available to you during the incentive auction. It is the incentive auction public reporting system. Beginning May 27th, that's this Friday, and continuing throughout the incentive auction, the public can access an incentive auction public reporting system. We call it the PRS for short. The PRS has 3 primary functions. First, it has a dashboard which allows the public to monitor the status of the incentive auction. It also has announcements that allow the public to view announcements from the auction system that have been made public. And finally, it has a forward auction product status. So this provides information about the products, which are the generic spectrum blocks that are for sale in the forward auction, what the status of those are round by round, including things like the current price, what the demand is for those products. One thing, I'm not going to go into in this presentation much about anything but the dashboard, because I think it's the most relevant to the reverse auction bidders. We will provide a user guide for the PRS on the auction system, on the Auction 1000 website. And like I said, we're just going to provide an overview of the dashboard and a reminder that the data in this presentation is for illustrative purposes only, and in no way represents predictions on the part of the FCC regarding the outcome of the incentive auction. During stage 1 of the reverse auction, the dashboard will display the stage number, an overall status of the incentive auction. In this case, we're showing it during the stage 1 of the reverse auction, so the status says that we're in the reverse auction clock phase of stage 1. It displays the clearing target and license spectrum amount for the current stage. In the reverse auction status box, it shows the current round number in the reverse auction. In the forward auction status box, it shows the status of the forward auction. Well, in this case, since we're in stage 1 of the reverse auction, it says that bidding has not yet started. The upcoming bidding schedule in the reverse auction is displayed. It will be the same schedule displayed to bidders when they are logged into the auction system. So you can use the public reporting system as a quick way to view the upcoming bidding schedule. When the reverse auction has concluded for a stage, the dashboard will display the total clearing cost. During stage 1 of the forward auction clock phase, the dashboard will display the current auction status. Since we've moved on in this example to the forward auction, the status now displays that stage 1 of the forward auction is in progress. It will just continue to display the status of the reverse auction, which in this case, if we're in the forward auction, bidding has concluded in the reverse auction, and the clearing costs are displayed. The status of the forward auction displays the current round and the auction proceeds as of the last round. As was shown during the reverse auction, during the forward auction clock phase, the upcoming bidding schedule in the forward auction is displayed. And finally, we see the progress towards meeting the final stage rule. The graphic displaying the progress towards meeting the final stage rule in the forward clock auction includes a box indicating whether the first component of the final stage rule has been met, a box indicating whether the second component has been met, and a box that indicates the overall status of meeting the final stage rule. That is, if it has been met or not met. Note that each of the two components must be met in order for the final stage rule to be satisfied. The box for each component displays the target amount needed to satisfy that component and the actual or estimated amount as of the last round of the forward clock auction. When a component is met, the status box turns green, and when both components are met, the overall status box turns green and the actual and estimated amounts are no longer reported. So we hope that you will use this public reporting system to monitor what is happening in the forward auction, especially as it pertains to the final stage rule being met. We're going to take a break now. Let's reconvene at 11:30. During the break, please send us any questions that you have for our Q&A session. You can email them at auction1001@fcc.gov. If you're here, please put your questions on a piece of paper and hand it to the nice people over here at the desk. And we will see you at 11:30.
Okay, if I could, it's 11:35. If I could ask everyone to take their seats again, please. So we have a few more slides to go through before we start on the Q&A. We're going to go over and discuss just a little bit on the new CORS registration system, which is also known as CORS 2. And we're also going to just highlight a little bit about if we go to a new stage. So if we don't close at stage 1 and have to go to a second stage, or if we don't close at the first stage. So let me reintroduce Erin Griffith, who's legal advisor of the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. All right. Before I discuss transitioning to a new stage of the auction, the Media Bureau would like me to make an announcement about CORS. So CORS, the FCC's FRN registration system, is being updated. So reverse auction winning bidders and broadcasters that may be receiving money for reimbursement costs will be using the updated CORS to facilitate the post-auction payment process. And so therefore you will be needing to use this updated version. To transition an FRN to the new CORS system, a user must log in to the new system and configure their account. The new CORS is right now in a limited pilot, but broadcasters will be added to the pilot sometimes this summer after the reverse auction. And the FCC will be reaching out with more information at that time, but do be on the lookout for this information and any training materials related to the launch of the new CORS. I'm now going to briefly discuss the transition to a new stage of the auction, should one be necessary. So this graphic that you're seeing on the screen is sort of a basic flow of how the incentive auction works. So as a reminder, each stage of the auction is for a particular clearing target. This first stage is a clearing target of 126 megahertz. The reverse auction clock phase starts May 31st. When bidding in the reverse auction clock phase concludes, the forward auction for stage 1 will start. And as the forward auction goes on, we'll be looking to see whether or not that final stage rule is met during the forward auction. And as you can see from this graphic, if it were to be met, then we would do the final TV channel assignments and the forward auction assignments. But if it's not met, that's when you go to a new stage. So that's what we're going to talk about now, is if it's not met. In a new stage, the clearing target will generally be the next lowest clearing target of the 600 megahertz band plan that the Commission adopted. Each lower clearing target adds one or more channels to the TV band. So you can see here, the one we're starting with at a clearing target of 126 megahertz, the highest possible channel is channel 29. If the auction system moves to a clearing target of, say, 114, which would be the next lowest, then the highest physical channel in the TV band would then be 31. Adding channels into the TV band means that in order to meet the new clearing target in this subsequent stage of the reverse auction, the auction system will not need to buy as many stations as it needed to meet the clearing target in the previous stage. Again, we're adding channels to the band, which means that we have more room to repack stations, so we don't have to buy as many. So as Melissa went over in her presentation, and we got a couple questions on this as we were going through the questions during the break, is how do you track whether or not the forward auction is going to meet the final stage rule? And you do that based using that public reporting system that she went over. And she showed you the graphics where you can see on that dashboard, you'll be able to track whether or not those little boxes turn green. If those boxes all turn green, then you'll know that it is the final stage and there won't need to be another reverse auction. But if the forward auction concludes and we have not met it, and you'll be able to see that on that public reporting system page, then we'll move on to a new stage. And more information about that public reporting system will become available, how to access it, and all those things in the coming week. And as a reminder, if the auction does proceed to a subsequent stage, we will be providing you with additional information and any additional training that you may need to participate in the new stage. Only bidders that had one or more station with the status of frozen provisionally winning at the end of the previous stage will be able to log into the system for the new stage. Stations that exited the auction in the previous stage, whether voluntarily or because they were determined to be not needed, will continue to have that status of exited in the new stage. So bidding in the new stage only pertains to stations that were frozen provisionally winning in the previous stage. And for any bidder that has no stations that were provisionally winning in the previous stage, they won't access the second stage because once exited, you're not participating in the auction anymore. So it's only, again, for bidders that have stations that were frozen provisionally winning. And in a new stage, the functionality of the auction system is basically the same as it was in the first stage. One of the things that will be different, of course, is the clearing target. So on the auction schedule screen, you would see the new clearing target with the new highest channel, and you'd see the schedules for stage 2. Again, these are illustrative schedules, so don't think that that's actually what the second stage would be if we had one. And also, there will be a preview period before round 1 of the new stage. So just like this one where you got to log in and be reminded of everything and see everything, we'll do the same thing again, where you can get in and see the information before the stage starts. The functionality of the screens in the system is basically the same, but some of the data does not carry over from the previous stage, which is important for you to know as Melissa was talking about printing off your bids and that sort of thing. For example, the download files in a new stage only contain data for the current stage. However, there will be a link that will enable you to access the auction system from the previous stage to get to that information, but it may be easier if you just go ahead and have it already downloaded, especially good practice to do at the end of the first stage. So that's sort of the brief overview of transitioning into a new stage, and at this time we're going to go ahead and do the Q&A panel.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending and for your attention. I'm Howard Simons. I'm the Vice Chair of the Incentive Auction Task Force. And joining me up here to address your questions, in addition to Aaron and Melissa, whom you've been listening to this morning, is Margie Weiner. She's the Chief of the Auctions Division at the Commission. Before we get into questions about the reverse auction, we've had a number of questions about timing and schedule, so let me cover those very briefly. As you know, the bidding in the reverse auction will begin May 31st. We don't know exactly how long the reverse auction will last, but we've estimated publicly that it would take roughly a month. Following the close of the reverse auction, we will run the forward auction, but we will first provide educational opportunities for forward auction bidders analogous to what we've been providing for reverse auction bidders this month, including a user guide, a tutorial, and a practice auction and a mock auction. So we will run through those before the forward auction begins so that forward auction bidders can be comfortable with the forward auction bidding system and the rules attending that. But today is about the reverse auction, and so with that, let me turn it over to our group of answer experts to address the questions that have come in.
Hi. So I have a number of questions a little bit more granular about bidding schedule. Just to make it clear, when the bidding starts on May 31st, there is one round, and that in that round, if your status is bidding, as you've been told multiple times this morning, you must bid if you want to keep that station in the auction for the next round. So once the auction starts on May 31st, the rounds go 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So you need to be on the ball on the 31st. The schedule was in the initial clearing target public notice. It will be in the auction system. There is one round on the first day, Tuesday, one round on the second day, and then on the third day we start with 2 rounds and continue until we change it.
In fact, Margie, the schedule is in the system now. When you log in during the preview period, you see the bidding schedule for those first few rounds.
Right. We also have a number of questions about the mock auction schedule. The mock auction starts on May 25th. That mock auction is like the regular auction. It's going to run, but only for 5 rounds for sure. So in order, as you've been told again, in order to bid in the mock auction, you must bid in the first round if your status is bidding. Otherwise, your missing bid will be treated for that station as a bid to drop out. So it's not a choice whether to participate in the mock auction on the 25th or the 26th. It is a series of rounds in the mock auction. Let's see. I think I've answered that one. I have a number of questions about logging in to the URL for the mock auction. That URL was in your enclosure in the final confidential status letter that went to qualified bidders. Should have the URL for the mock auction. If you have questions about that, you can call the auction bidder line that was also provided in that enclosure. Let's see. I have another question about multiple facilities with separate FRNs that may be qualified to bid. Again, the mock auction is like the regular auction in that sense. For every bidder that was qualified to bid for at least one station, you will be able to log in for each of those stations that have a separate FRN if you were qualified to bid for that FRN. I have some practical logging in and bidding questions. Someone has asked whether an RSA token can be used during the mock auction on an airplane using Wi-Fi. We would say that this might be a good opportunity to check and practice your backup options for bidding. This is one of the reasons why we have multiple authorized bidders available to applicants. We can't guarantee your own connection to the internet. And as you can see in the user guide for the bidding system, we support specific operating systems, and you have to make sure that you're using a supported operating system and that you have a good connection. However, should you lose your connection, there is the opportunity of telephonic bidding, and that, again, is through the auction bidder line number that was in your enclosure.
You may also want to only do that if you have an empty middle seat on the plane, I think, just for security purposes.
Right. We have a couple of miscellaneous questions. This workshop will be put on the website. I can't tell you right now how long it will be. It should include everything you have seen and heard here, and we will get it up as quickly as feasible. And finally, the question about your info information, your station info information that is in the bidding system does not include everything that was in your Form 177. So if you have questions about whether what you put in for a particular station on your application and you don't see it on the info screen, you have to go back to your Form 177 to see that information. For instance, information about channel sharing agreements. And I think that covers my questions. On to Erin.
Thank you, Margie. All right. So I have a sort of variety of questions here, but I'll start with some that relate to the results of bid processing. So someone asked if the preview period right now displays the actual results of the initial commitments, and the answer is yes. Those are the actual results of the initial commitments. And this person asks if the site is showing that a station currently has the status bidding, does that mean that the FCC has definitively concluded that the station's initial commitment was not taken? That is the opposite. If you have a status of bidding, that means that when we process the results of the initial commitment, you were assigned to an option. Remember, the option that you were assigned to as a result of bid processing is called the currently held option. In the preview period, that's under the initial option tag. We call it an initial option just because it's coming into round one. And that is the option that right now, if you were to be frozen, or if you place a bid in the next round that, and we find we don't have a feasible channel for you, that option at that price that you see right now is where you would be frozen, in that currently held option at the price that you see. But the status bidding means that right now the auction system was able to find a feasible channel for you in your pre-auction band. So if you want to keep staying in the auction, you will need to place a bid in the auction. So that information that you see right now is the real information, and it will be what you use for round one. Another says that the initial option compensation listed and the clock price for round one are different values. Well, yes, because the initial option, your currently held option, that's the last option and associated price that the auction system took for you, right? So the next round, round one, that's where you have to either say, yes, as a matter of fact, I do want to stay in the auction for a particular relinquishment option at the offered price. So that's why you see those two prices. One is the option you hold at the price. Remember, if you were to become frozen during bid processing of the next round, you would be frozen in that currently held option at that price. But we're offering you lower prices, so that's the lower price that you see there. So that's why they're different. A couple people asked how long after the close of a round until the results are posted. We estimate that it will take somewhere around 15 minutes to complete the bid processing. However, depending on how long it does take to do the bid processing, it could take longer, and the FCC may have to adjust the schedule and timing of the rounds to accommodate that. So on average, I would say look for it within about 15 minutes, or there may be an announcement that it's going to take longer, and we won't start, and we may have to delay the next round. And also, someone wanted to know on the downloads window how the current data in the My Results download will be. Does it have the results from the current round? So the My Results will display the bid processing results from the round that just closed, or any round that you select, to see the results from. So it will have the information. In this case, for the initial options, if you download that file, it shows you the results of the initial option, which contains, again, that information that you'll actually be using in round one, right? What the new price offers are. So that's where the My Results file has. Another person wanted to know, are you, the bidders, determining your own bidding amounts or price offers? And the answer is no, because it is a clock auction, so the prices are being set by the clock that is descending, and you will be offered prices. So your job as the bidder is to look at the price offers and say, do I want to take that relinquishment option at that price or not? Do I want to switch into a different option for that option's price or not? So you're responding to price offers by the commission. You're not generating your own prices. The station volume that I mentioned during the presentation, and you can see it on the station info tab, was a calculation that was done a long time ago. But it was used to set your opening price offers, and it is a combination of the station's population and the amount of interference that it can cause to other stations. So sort of, if we have to put your station back into its pre-auction band, how much trouble are you going to give us putting other stations around you? And so the number is, sort of based on that concept, and you can see what it was on the station info screen. So there were a couple questions about price offers, and as I mentioned during the presentation, we provide a lot of additional information about the calculation of price offers in the tutorial. There is actually a section on the price offers in the additional details part of that tutorial that you may find useful if you're wanting to understand how the actual calculations happen. But someone asked, will all stations' decrement be the same percentage? And the answer is that the base clock price decrement is always that formula that I gave you, right? The greater of 5% or the 1%, that we went through. But the actual decrement percentage for stations that are not UHF stations bidding to go off air can vary slightly. And the reason for that is the formula that we use to calculate those price offers, the calculation that the system does, takes into account vacancy information. And that vacancy information is going to be different for every station in every band because it's based, on your station in your station's neighborhood in the particular band that we're looking at. So those prices are sort of, in addition to the base clock price, being driven by vacancy, and that's why they're not a predictable decrement amount. And some questions about placing bids. So someone asked, for instance, if a UHF station bids to move to one of the VHF bands, and the system accepts that as that move and assigns that station to have that new band as its currently held option, meaning that there is room, can the station still be found to be not needed? And the answer is yes. Because remember, having room in the band, being able to accommodate your station in the band, is not the same thing as winning. The station could still become not needed because as the bid processing is happening, remember, the auction system is always trying to determine, is there a feasible channel for your station and its pre-auction band? Simply because we can accommodate your station in the low or high VHF band does not necessarily mean that you are going to freeze, because freezing depends on your pre-auction band. So your prices will continue to decrease if you are still needed and not frozen. And another person wanted to know about the bidding hierarchy, which I'll go over again because we didn't really talk about it today. But if you place a bid to move from, let's say, go off air to one of the VHF options, and the auction system successfully is able to find a feasible channel for you in that band and changes your currently held option from go off air to one of those move to VHF options, remember that you can't go backwards. So once the system assigns you that new currently held option, you will no longer see price offers for the option that you switched from. And I think Melissa may talk a little bit more, or I guess, no, I'll go ahead and talk about it. So when you were trying to switch into a VHF option, someone wanted to know if there was risk involved with that, right? What if there isn't a feasible station or a feasible channel for you in that band? And that's where you have those fallback bids that come up, asking what you want to do in the event that you can't be accommodated. And the options are as follows. You may either accept the lower price offer for the option you are currently assigned to, your currently held option, or you can drop out. So you can always try to switch into the VHF bands, and then you'll just tell the system what you want the system to do with your station in the event that it can't be accommodated. And Melissa will probably talk about that more. Also, it is correct that there is one bid per station per round. And sometimes if you're bidding to go into VHF, you also have to submit that fallback with that, but you're only bidding once per station per round. And so someone else asked a very good question, actually, which is during the initial commitment, they had opted, for a particular option, so they had wanted to go off air. So in the results that you see in the preview period, they wanted to know, why is it showing these other options, like move to high V or move to low V? This is a good place to look at the tutorial in the available options section, but the options that are available to you are the ones that you selected on your form and that are still available under the hierarchy. So if this bidder were to want to continue to bid to go off air, it can continue to bid to go off air, but it also will see the price offers for the other things that it had selected.
Sure. I'll go for a little while. It's great. We got lots of questions. It's good. So this is an interesting question. So several of you have more than one authorized bidder. So a question asked is, more than one authorized bidder is placing a bid for a station. What will be displayed on the bid summary screen as far as in that column that says who placed the bid and at what time? So let's say that Aaron and I are both authorized bidders for our company, and I place a bid, then in the bid summary screen it's going to show my name and it shows the time I submitted that. Then if Aaron comes in and places a bid for that same station, it overwrites my bid. So then if you go to the bid summary screen, you're going to see Erin's name and Erin's time because her bid overwrites my bid. Make sense? Okay, can you explain the drop out to UHF? So you see that on the My Results screen. It says, under the available options, it says drop out to UHF if you're a UHF station. If you're a VHF station, it says drop out to VHF. So what that is saying, it's the option you have always to drop out of the auction. In the place bids page under the drop down, you'll see it say drop out of bidding. It's the same thing. Drop out of bidding is the bid option you see on the drop down. Drop out to your homebound is what you see on the My Results screen, but it's that option to drop out of the bidding. The vacancy range next to that option, I got some questions about that, indicates how free your pre-auction band is. So if you're going to drop out, that means we got to find a place for you in your pre-auction band, right? So the vacancy associated with that is how much room there is in your pre-auction band. if your main interest is to go off air, is there any risk in trying to move to the other options? So if your main interest is to go off air, then presumably you would bid to go off air. You only bid to move if that's what you want to do, because if we process that bid, then you are assigned to that option, and based on the hierarchy, you can't go back. Okay. So if you want to move to one of those bands, there's no risk in trying. Even if your vacancy number is low, there's not a risk in trying. That's why we give fallback instructions, because it says if we can't accommodate you, tell us what you want us to do. But if your primary interest is to stay in your currently held option, then it doesn't make sense to bid to move, right? So bid where you want to be. Okay. One of the questions started out with, if I change my bid status for my station. I just want to clarify that. You don't change your bid status, right? The system calculates your bid status. What you change is your bid. So you can say, okay, I'm currently assigned to whatever option. I may want to change my currently held option, and so you bid for that. So I just want to clarify that a status is something that the system reports to you. It's not something that you change. Several questions about if fallback options are required. And yes, they are. So if you're bidding to move to one of the VHF bands, you will be prompted to provide a fallback bid, and the system will not let you submit your bid until you have selected that fallback. Actually, the fallback is by default selects your currently held option. So it requires you to pick one. The reason is if we cannot accommodate you in that move to one of the VHF bands, we need instructions. What do you want us to do? You want us to drop you out of the auction? You want to stay in your currently held option? So yes, you have to provide those fallbacks. But the fallbacks are only applicable if you're moving to switch from your currently held option. So if your currently held option is moved to low V, you don't need to provide a fallback because you're already in that option. It's your held option. It's only if you're trying to move into the band that you have to select a fallback. I mentioned that some of the stations are already frozen at their opening bid. Can I tell you roughly what the clearing cost is for just those stations that have already been frozen? I cannot. And if you can't do that, can I approximate the number of stations that have already been frozen? I'm not able to release that information. That is part of our under our rules of non-disclosure about what people's bids and bidding statuses are. We're not allowed to disclose that. So at the end of the reverse auction, though, we will release the clearing cost, as you saw on the public reporting system, but that is the sum across all the stations that are provisionally winning. What does it mean to be frozen currently infeasible? So Aaron touched on this a little bit. There's a lot more information in the tutorial. It applies only to VHF stations. It means at this point in time, we cannot find a feasible channel for you in your home VHF band, but it's possible that later in the stage, a channel will be available in your band. And so you're frozen, but you're not provisionally winning yet. And clarify the concept of being frozen. So we have these two different types of frozen provisionally winning, frozen currently infeasible. They're both frozen. What does it mean to be frozen? It means that your price isn't dropping. And that means you don't need to bid. So just remember that. Frozen means your price doesn't drop. You're frozen at your currently held option and that price. Lots of questions about vacancy ranges. Good. We will get there. And we will continue to provide more information. People are asking about the weight. What does the weighted average mean? So the weight is the volume. That's what we weight it by. And some people ask for an example. So I'm going to try to provide a very simple example of how the weighted average works for calculating a vacancy index. So let's say we're calculating the vacancy index for my station in my home band. What we're going to look at is the stations in my home band that could cause interference to me based on whatever their status is in the auction, if they're in the auction and what their currently held option is. And well, if it's the home band, then we're looking at who could cause interference to you if they were to drop out. So let's say that Aaron and Margie both can cause interference to me in my home band. So what we're going to do is the system calculates how many channels are available to me currently in my home band, how many channels are available to Aaron, how many channels are available to Margie for each of their stations. They're in my neighborhood. To calculate my index, we're going to take the number of channels available to me times my volume. So that's my weight. The number of channels available to her times her volume. Number of channels available to Margie times her volume. We're going to add that all together, and we're going to divide it by the sum of our volumes. That's what we mean by a weighted average of available channels in your neighborhood. And I think it's a good idea. We'll add maybe an example to the slides before we put them in the tutorial, something like that makes it that you can look at and go back to. Someone was asking about what does the index range, the vacancy range for dropout to my home band mean. Aaron touched on this. If the vacancy is getting low in your home band, it provides an indication that you may be getting close to becoming frozen. That's why we provide that number to you. An example, a question about why the vacancy ranges in some cases seem to be so broad, like a broad range from they say an example of 1.2 all the way up to 5 as a range. And that's actually a difficult question to answer because it depends on the calculations for these VHF bands. So I'm going to defer that one. If you really want to talk more about that, call in to the auction bidder line and we will have some more discussion about that. But it has to do with how these things are calculated. Can a station move from high V to low V only if there is vacancy in both bands? No. We are only looking at the band that you're trying to move into when we're trying to see if we can feasibly accommodate that. If you are in a band, then we've already accommodated that. So we're only looking, when you're trying to move, we look at the vacancy in the band you're trying to move into. Can you discuss the relationship between impairment in a market as it relates to vacancy? So impairing stations are those stations that have been assigned to a channel in the 600 megahertz band, so above the highest channel. Those stations do not play a part in vacancy ranges because when we calculate the vacancy range, we're looking at the TV band, the capacity of the TV band in your neighborhood. So it's unrelated. Even if there are impairing stations in your market, because we're only looking at the TV band, it doesn't have an impact. Well, the bidding results from each round also show the vacancy numbers for each round. So the vacancy numbers show up if it's a bid option that you can move into or for your home band. And each round they will be provided for your available options, as Aaron talked about. And the last thing is, can I elaborate on unlimited capacity? So we said that the off-air option has unlimited capacity, and so there's no vacancy ranges for it. In the bands, we have a limited number of channels to put TV stations. But if a station wants to go off-air, we don't have to consider if there's a channel for them because they're going off the air. So that's what we mean by unlimited capacity.
And just to finish up, a very brief discussion again of proxy instructions. Proxy instructions are something that you can use voluntarily. They are what tells the auction system to, when you place a proxy instruction, you're placing a dollar figure. And because it is a descending clock auction, your prices, as long as you have the status bidding, will continue to descend from round to round. The auction system will look at your proxy instruction and it says, is the price equal to or above the proxy instruction, so your price offer in that round? If it is, the auction system will go ahead and place that bid for you. And if it is not, then those instructions are no longer in effect, meaning that you better make sure you bid if you want to stay in the auction. So some people had some questions about, do you know, will they be good for a couple rounds and, all those sort of things, right? The bottom line is you can use proxy instructions. It's a great tool to make sure that if you know that you're going to be bidding down to a certain amount and you want to put that in and have the auction system place those bids for you, you can do that, but you still need to pay attention to your price offers and your bidding status because If it gets below your proxy instruction amount, then it won't place bids for you. Another person asked, well, can't I just set my proxy amount to 0 if I really, really want to stay in the auction? And the answer to that is actually no. In order to sort of be a safety mechanism on not having people enter prices way lower than they intended to enter, we cap the amount of the proxy instruction at 75% of the current round bid. So, that's another reason you need to monitor them, because, you can't set it down to 0. Also, someone wanted to know if the FCC will notify bidders in a particular DMA that their bids are final once the forward auction for a particular DMA is sufficient to pay for the first to conclude the auction. And the answer to that is no. It's a nationwide auction. It's a nationwide clearing target, so we're not looking at particular markets closing. We're looking at the reverse auction of a stage concluding when all stations have either become frozen provisionally winning or exited. And the forward auction is the same. It's a nationwide clearing target, so that information is not done market by market. And finally, another broadcaster wanted to know, how do we know when the reverse auction is going to start over? Well, again, we encourage you, when we put out that information about the public reporting system as the forward auction is underway, to check in on it and see how it's doing, because that's going to give you an indication of whether or not that final stage rule is going to be met, in which case there won't be another reverse auction. Or if the final stage rule is not met, you'll be able to sort of track that and see that you will in fact be having a second stage of the reverse auction, and bidding would resume with all of those stations that were frozen provisionally winning at the end of the first stage.
Thank you all, and thank you to the entire team for today's presentation. Very helpful, and added to our volume of information provided to reverse auction bidders over the course of this month. We commend it all to you, and let me just reiterate a point that's been made a couple of times. We urge you to tune in and participate in tomorrow's mock auction. It begins at 10 a.m. The link was provided in your final confidential letters. It really will give you a kind of hands-on exposure to the auction system that will be invaluable to you next week when the real bidding begins. I think it will show you that while there's a lot of information here about the auction, actually participating in the auction and bidding in the auction will be very straightforward. You've seen some of the screenshots, but it's no substitute for actually logging on and having that hands-on experience, which is why we've done it before every auction, and we urge you to log on tomorrow and participate in the auction. Second, as we move forward, I think the public reporting system will be of interest to you. Aaron just mentioned it a minute ago. We will be putting out a public notice and a user guide on the public reporting system, so you will know how to use it and what to be looking for. And with that, I will bring this workshop to a close. Thank you all for participating and attending. We remain available for questions, and we'll see you anonymously, of course, at tomorrow's mock auction.